I think nobody wants to be competing with OpenAI or one of the labs right now. I feel like I was not naturally very great at like consumer marketing and kind of being a consumer founder. I think the first is I would open a TikTok account like day -10, Before doing this, I'm not like super on social media. Like I'd wake up and I'd be like, oh, good morning, Priyanka. Like definitely would have spent 75% of my time building the community rather than building the product initially. What if I could create a podcast that was like super personalized to like what I want to hear and it was also interactive? I started again with consumer now, like a totally different playbook, like totally different start. So
Priyanka, welcome to No Fixed Route.
thanks for having me.
So you recently went viral on LinkedIn for exiting your company, Galen AI. Why don't you start by telling us what Galen is?
Yeah, so Galen AI is essentially a personal health intelligence platform. So what that means is we connect to every type of data source possible for your health, anything from your lab results, gene testing, wearables, EHR, and we bring that data together. We create kind of like a timeline, this reasoning layer that essentially, when you ask a question about your health or even everyday day-to-day life, we give you proactive and personalized guidance based on your health data and your health journey.
So is a lot of this proactive, like the AI telling the user what to do, or do they come in and like ChatGPT style ask it questions?
Yeah, so currently it's more kind of, when you ask a question, we synthesize your data, we look at your history, and then we kind of decide, what's the best way to steer you and guide you. But the vision is that, there's no reason that this needs to be so reactive. Like you shouldn't need to come and ask a question. You should be able to have an assistant, kind of an engine that lives in your pocket every day and essentially tells you before things happen, like, hey, you should pay attention to this, or like, hey, have you thought about this? That's the broader vision that we're working towards.
Awesome. And we spoke about this before we came on camera, but ChatGPT for Health came out. And I think at least from outside of YC, we see releases from all these huge AI labs. Every single day is killing like half of the YC companies. And you guys like were juggling through some of these conversations before the acquisition offer came, right? Can you walk us through what happens when a company like OpenAI or Claude releases a very similar product? Like how were you and your co-founder talking about that? And then what did you decide to do with that information?
Yeah, I think obviously, our first reaction was like, oh shit, like we're kind of screwed. I think nobody wants to be competing with OpenAI or one of the labs right now. I think for us it was an interesting situation because we kind of knew that something was coming. I think we had seen signs that the labs, especially OpenAI, were investing more in health. They had hired previous like really successful health CEOs to run parts of the company, but it was still kind of a shock when they released it. So I remember the day they released it, my co-founder was like, oh my God, like, did you see the announcement on Twitter? And we were kind of like, we're screwed, like, what do we do? But I think also being a startup founder, you have to be ready for anything. And I think naturally our personalities is that like, okay, this happened. There's really nothing we can do about it except kind of move forward and figure out what to do. And so I think for us, like there was kind of a couple of options we thought through. I think the first is, just because a big player releases the same product doesn't necessarily mean you're dead. Like that doesn't mean that they're going to succeed. We've seen so many big products being released and then kind of dying, for example, like Sora and stuff like that, right? So one is like, it doesn't mean you're going to fail or not succeed. But I think also given that distribution was such a huge moat, we kind of felt like we don't want to compete on the same exact vertical that these labs are going after. And so for us, the options are like, we can either join forces with the bigger company that's working on this problem and already has distribution. We can really then bring, what we want to see in the world, like this vision into the world, or we can kind of pivot and just start something totally new and kind of go into a new path. So that's what we were thinking of.
In my head, I would have thought, oh my God, this is a problem that OpenAI cares about. Like we're actually in the right path. Like we're not crazy. We're not alone.
Yeah.
We just got validation. Did that side ever come in, or was it very much like a defensive reaction that you guys got?
I think the first reaction was definitely defensive. It was like someone's coming after our lunch. Like this is like what we're working on. So this is kind of our thing. But I think after that, there was a sense of like, hey, like other people are paying attention to this. This actually matters. But I think the reason it came second is because we already knew that it mattered and we knew that all the companies were thinking about it. It's just that nobody had like publicly talked about it yet. So we already knew that what we were working on was a huge pain point and was something that a lot of people are going after. I think we just didn't realize like how quickly things are ramping up in that area.
Yeah. Is there a lesson there for other founders and like, how fast to move or what to care about? Do we stay away from what OpenAI could potentially build, or do we just like do it without being scared? Like what lessons can we take? Would you give other founders in your shoes? Like the
Yeah.
next YC batch coming, like what should they think about?
I think the biggest lesson is to be adaptable. I think you never know for sure what's coming. I think you can speculate and you can have a pretty good sense of like what the big companies are working on, but you never know for sure. And the other part of that I talk about is that also just because, something is released does not necessarily mean like you should stop working on that if you are working on that, or that, oh, that's gonna like totally derail what you're doing. But I think kind of in this day and age also, given that a lot of software can be like quite easily replicated, I think the biggest lesson is probably like when you are working on something, you need to really think about like what is that thing that differentiates you beyond the software. And that could be like your community, that could be like hardware, something, but something that is defensible beyond like, oh hey, OpenAI just like built the same software that you built.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast with the Airbnb CEO, and he was saying apps are dead. Everything's pretty much dead. The only thing that's left at the end of the day is your community.
Yeah.
So refreshing to hear you say that as well. You guys were growing. You guys were building community. A lot of people were finding out about you guys on Reddit, and you guys also had word of mouth growth. It wasn't like you guys were slowing down at any point. Like every single day you guys were growing, even as all this OpenAI stuff was going on. And then you had a company that was interested in what you guys were building and what you guys have done. First, tell us who the company is and how the early conversations went with that.
Yeah, so the company was Oura. So we were acquired by Oura about a month ago and have been working with them since then. Kind of the early conversations started honestly right after the ChatGPT for health announcements. This was towards end of January, and we just had someone from their team reach out, or interested in talking with us, and that's how it started.
Nice. How many conversations did it take until you guys closed?
A lot, way more than I thought. We were talking for almost 3 months, and
Wow.
so in that time period, at least one conversation like every week, I would say about.
And at what point did it become clear what their intentions were?
I think about like a month or so in, maybe a little less. I think we both of us kind of reached this understanding of, we had spent a couple of conversations, we were getting to know them, they're getting to know us. And at first, I think we were thinking maybe there could be some kind of cool partnership opportunity with them. Aura was a company that we thought was really cool. And like I've been an Aura user myself. And so we thought it was a super cool company and would love to like kind of work closer with them. But I think after our first couple weeks of conversations, it became clear that like what they were interested in was kind of more of like acquisition, like deeper partnership, and we felt like there was a really good like culture fit between us, and that's kind of when both sides broke the ice and we were like, all right, let's get down to business and talk about what we really want to talk about.
And does diligence for an acquisition look similar to diligence for fundraising, or is it completely different
From their side.
from what you had to do? Like, did you have to like clean up your accounting and stuff like that?
Mm.
Or was it like, oh, I like this idea, I'm just going to give them whatever money that they're asking for?
Yeah, I think it's a bit different. On our side, there was not a lot of diligence to do with the company. It was more so diligence of like, do we believe that Aura is going to do really well as a company? Like, do we believe in the potential of this company? Do we believe that we would be able to like really fit into the team and like kind of execute on this vision that we have? And so for us, it's more of understanding what is the team culture there like, what does the leadership think, and like would we be good fits there? I think on their end, they obviously did do some deeper diligence on kind of what like our tech stack was, what our backgrounds were, and things like that.
Okay. Were your existing investors in the loop at all?
No, they were, and I think we've always had the relationship with our investors of, they kind of like trust us to make the executive decisions, and we use them as like a sounding board. And when we kind of, want to get advice on things. And so for us, it's more of kind of informing them like, hey, we've talked to this company and we feel like this is the next best step for us. And, we want to let you know so that we can keep you guys informed. And they were on board and were supportive.
Makes sense. Was there anyone, like maybe it was your co-founder, maybe it was you, that was anti-acquisition?
I think I was initially hesitant just because I feel like I don't like being told what to do. And I think working at a bigger company, which this is my first like real job, I was like, what if I don't like being told what to do? What if like I was like, I don't want to feel like I don't have enough freedom and like creative kind of freedom to really execute the decision the way that I want. But I think what kind of sold me was, going back to after this ChatGPT for Health release, I think there were a couple of reasons why we were even like considering acquisition. And I think the first is that I realized that, building in consumer is like very hard, as you know. And I feel like I was not naturally very great at like consumer marketing and kind of being a consumer founder. And so given that we were kind of struggling with getting more distribution, like growing at like a bigger pace, we realized that, if what we really cared about, and what I realized is what I cared about was like, I really believe that this kind of tool needs to be available to the population. Like it should not be hard to find it off. It should not be hard to get personalized insights and like guidance from all this data that we have. And so for me, it was more so that I really wanted to see this vision in the world. And I realized that the best way to do that was to actually join forces with a company like Oura that already has a distribution, already has kind of the data and like the science to do that, rather than to try to kind of like fight our way through it when all these big players are there. And so ultimately, I think that's what convinced me, like, this is like kind of a different chapter, but it's still one in which we can execute on this original vision that we had.
Makes total sense. I will add that I think you would have been a great consumer founder. Like I spent hours with you already. I don't think there's anything that you're lacking to be a good consumer founder. You definitely would have made it with or without Aura, right?
Yeah.
So that first
I
point
think there are a lot of learnings. Like I feel like if I started again with consumer now, like a totally different playbook, like totally different start. So yeah.
What are one or two things you do different? I'm kind of curious.
Well, I think the first is I would open a TikTok account like day -10. Before doing this, I'm not like super on social media. Like I had like probably like 50 followers on Twitter, and like my Instagram has like 0 posts. So I was very not used to posting myself or posting any content. And for the first few months of building our company, we just kind of like built and like talked to users, and we're building with feedback, but we were not posting or like creating any content. And I think for consumer, that is like,
It's required.
it's basically required, and it's something you have to do even before building, just like building the community. So I think definitely would have spent 75% of the time building the community rather than building the product initially, whereas before I think it was the reverse. It was what we were doing.
Yeah, I think for me, B2B is a lot harder. It's very easy to get like early traction in the early days. So you get like 1 or 2 customers, and that's enough to fundraise. Versus consumer, you have to get tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, before you can like raise any kind of capital. But if you're able to get that escape velocity, which I think you guys had, it becomes a lot easier. You're getting feedback from a lot of people, not just like a single company using your tool. Also, if one person decides not to use it, it doesn't like kill your whole company. Right. So like once you pass from seed probably till exit, consumer is easier, and then from 0 to raising your seed, B2B is easier. Is my thought. And then there's aspect that it's where it's very hard. In B2B, you just have to be good at technology, good at sales, nothing else. Consumer, you have to be good at technology, you got to be good at marketing, you have to be good at culture, and you have to be
and that's the sales of consumer, right? It's like you're producing content, producing like being like relatable, like making that relatability.
You have to like capture the minds of masses of people, and you have to be really good at PR too, which is kind of difficult to do. Okay, so you're about a month in. All these ideas that you had earlier on of what it's like to work for a big company, how much of it did you find was true?
I think it's 50-50. And I think also I'm quite lucky because my situation is that, I am part of this company, and Aura is, I think they raised a Series E. So they're kind of at this transition of like becoming like a bigger company, but still like a smaller startup phase. And then the team I'm on in particular in the company operates as a startup like within the company. And so, we move super fast. Like we're shipping every day. We're getting things out really quickly, and we're having beta testers and users. And so I think in that sense, it feels almost as if it's still like I'm working on Galen, but with like a bigger team now, and we're all like moving fast and like have a lot of cool ideas. And so I think that was something I was expecting, because I was thinking like, okay, there might be some more guardrails, might be moving a little slower, but that's all good. Where I think it feels most different is that even though my team is operating, as like a startup and we can move fast, there are still a lot of, we still fit into this broader ecosystem of like what the company is and what they're doing. And so we still have kind of input from the executives and from other people, and we have these like specific kind of checkpoints and very long processes for example, if we want to, we're kind of at the phase where we're going from like beta testing to trying to like increase the amount of testers we have for what we're building, and there's like this whole checklist of like things to go through. So I think there are more checks and balances in going from like prototyping to some version of like V1, but so far, because I've been working on mostly the prototyping phase in my team, it's felt very much like a startup still.
That makes sense. How much of I want to ask you a question about consumer health in general.
Mhm.
You've got a lot of these wearable companies, Whoop or whatever, going into like lab testing and going into medication delivery. You've also got companies like Hims or Roe that start with medications going into wearables. And then you got, from left field companies like Function Health or Superpower that started with lab testing going for whatever Oura and Whoop or Hims are doing. Do you have a sense of like where things will end up in the next 5 to 10 years and who's best positioned to capture consumer health? Like, do all these companies need to be doing everything, or should they all focus on their lane and just stick there?
Yeah. Consumer health is fun. I like consumer health, obviously. I mean, I think like broadly, everyone is essentially trying to converge on like AI doctor, right? I think the main driving thesis that everyone believes and that I also believe right now is that what is going to win and what people want is that there should be like one central place that has all your health data and that is like your touch point for anything related to your healthcare. And so this is from everything from, let's say you have wearables or you're wearing devices that are producing signals, like that should all be in one place. That should be, being synthesized, being like reasoned over daily. And if necessary, that should be going like to your doctor. And then that same app or place you go to should directly connect you to care and say like, oh, you have this like condition, like let me find whoever's a network for you and then like kind of triage you there. So I think that's why we're seeing this trend of like, companies that have spent the past, for wearables like Whoop and Oura, they spent the past 10 years kind of in this space of like, oh, like the ring or like this device. And then even companies like Function and Superpower, who for the past year, their remote has been lab testing, they're all trying to like add other things, right? And what it seems like is everyone is trying to add a little bit of everything and become that like one-stop shop. So I think it's inevitable that we reach this concept of AI doctor or one-stop shop. And so I do think that that's the reason why everyone is kind of going there. And I also think what's true right now is that nobody's really captured that. Like there's not one company that seems like, oh, it's like really far ahead or it has a bigger moat in this space. And so I think it's honestly super open and it's unclear right now, like who's gonna come
Anyone
on
can win.
top. Yeah.
That makes sense. This concept of AI doctor is kind of interesting. Everyone's trying to build one.
Yes.
Where's the consumer at? Like, are you seeing people? I mean, obviously, ChatGPT Health comes out like every time I have like a skin rash or whatever. I ask ChatGPT first. In San Francisco, maybe we trust our AI over any of the doctors. But do you see most Americans being okay with taking medication prescribed by AI, or are we still not there yet?
Yeah, we're definitely in a bubble. I think most people in San Francisco would totally be okay with like an AI prescribing medications or would probably trust AI more than a doctor. But I think it's definitely not true in the rest of the US. My dad, for example, is a physician in Cleveland. So I grew up in Ohio and there is a huge gap in kind of like what even the concept of AI means in San Francisco versus like for most of my friends back home in Ohio, like a lot of them AI just means like, oh, ChatGPT is like the AI. And maybe there's like one or two other like special niche like kind of models or like apps they use for things. So I think for most people, my hunch is that younger people are probably more so kind of open to, having more triaging done by AI, having potentially like very like easy or routine prescriptions being prescribed by AI, but definitely not more complex things and more complex cases or like kind of more long-term care. And then I think for the older generation, there's still a huge sense of like, the doctor has to be someone that can like really like see you physically and like really like be there as like a human like touch point. So I don't think that there is like a lot of like desire for AI to be involved in that right now.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting place. I don't know, like when iPhones came out, or like when the internet came out, if the users of the internet were anti-internet. I don't know. Like when the iPhones came out, were the users of the iPhone anti-iPhone? I don't think so. But AI is interesting because like consumers outside of San Francisco are very anti-AI. But we're still like building to help them, and they don't realize this yet. I kind of wonder where things will shake out. For example, in our product, AI does most of the work, but patients don't know they're talking to an AI, right? Like for them, they're talking to Rick,
Yeah.
which is an actual employee, by the way. And whenever they call the phone, we answer, right? My name isn't Rick, but I answer the phone and I'm like, hey, this is Rick calling from Doctours. How can I help?
Yeah.
And it works that way. But as soon as they realize that they're talking to an AI, the conversation shifts. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, let me talk to a human. Do you have a phone number I can dial? Like, things kind of go down that route.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see. Where do you think like the government comes into play here? Because like healthcare is very regulated for like consumer safety. Healthcare is also one of the biggest, job creating spaces in our country. And AI is like trying to kill all of that. Do you think we're going to struggle with the government when adopting AI in healthcare, or do you think it's going to be smoother?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think AI is like killing healthcare in the sense of like taking away like jobs from doctors or anything like that right now, right? Like I think that one, again, like we're in such a bubble that nowhere else are people actually thinking like, oh, AI is going to, like I think that even the concept of AI doctor is a very San Francisco thing to say. And even a few months ago in San Francisco, it was like kind of taboo, but now everyone's like on this AI doctor train. So I would think that there is, at least in the next like 10 years or so, I don't think there's like an actual danger of like, oh, health, like AI is going to like take over healthcare from the perspective of like physicians. But I think where the government comes in, honestly, right now, the biggest area is like regulation of like AI devices and regulation of like software as a medical device. So the FDA, for example, has had these like kind of rules on like what qualifies as software as a medical device, and there's super lengthy process to approve them and to test them. And historically, like devices that used AI were also categorized as like software devices, and that was like a totally like wrong way to interpret them, because like one is like for many devices that use AI, you need like to have a really quick feedback loop of like, oh, like we update this, or like we like improve the model, do whatever. And the process of like getting something approved and even getting it reapproved if you had changes was like super long and lengthy. So I'm not like I did some research on this like 5 years ago, so I'm not super up to date, but I know that the FDA has been kind of like changing what those guidelines are, but they're not like still very structured, or like there's not like some, like they're still kind of morphing into, what the future is. And so I think that is where the FDA will have the most impact in the coming years, is like classifying what is a medical device or not. And that also ties into, is the Oura ring medical device, is the Whoop a medical device? And if it is, like, all these companies are trying to develop technologies for things like monitoring like your blood sugar, potentially monitoring, early signs of diseases. And if the FDA is like super strict on like, oh, if this is a medical device, you like cannot, basically if the FDA is super strict and they're like, oh, if, the Whoop and Oura ring like can't be classified as medical devices, then they'll be like, well, then you can't like predict certain things, or you can't like do clinical guidance. Whereas on the flip side, it's like if we already have those algorithms potentially, and if like people are working on this research, and we can just get the regulations and policies to be loosened up to allow these devices to be classified as such, then there's a potential they could like help a lot of people, right? So I think that's one of the biggest areas where policies can really drive like how the data we have can be utilized for consumers.
That's super interesting. Never thought of it that way. Like your Apple Watch could potentially save you if your heart has, some kind of issue. But if the FDA is like, oh, you're not a medical device, then you can't even tell people that they should go see a doctor or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think for a lot of like leaders who are in health tech right now, I think that is like a big focus, is like trying to work with policymakers and being like, hey, like we used to have these super strict guidelines on what a medical device was, and that might not really be applicable anymore because of like the new technologies and like algorithms and models that we have now, and we need to start like rearranging and like taking a look at what that means again.
Makes total sense. Let's talk about AI. I'm kind of curious, what do you use in your life? What AIs do you use in your life outside of Cursor and Cloud Code?
Outside of Cursor and Cloud Code, I was on the Open Cloud train for a while.
Okay.
I got myself a Mac Mini. I made my own little personal assistant, and I like to text on Telegram, so I like that. And then I use Codex. Does Codex count?
Yeah, no, we're not. Let's not count Codex. Yeah.
Okay, I think Open Cloud is probably the biggest one. I spent a lot of time like customizing it and trying to get it to like.
So what kinds of things is it good at, and what kinds of things is it not good at?
So I would say it's good at like kind of like admin tasks, or it's good at tasks where it's something that can be done like without a lot of feedback in the loop, basically.
Like
right?
doing your taxes?
I would not let it do my taxes. I keep it pretty contained. I also like don't, I'm kind of concerned about it like reading through my files and stuff, so I have this, empty Mac Mini. But for example, one thing I did was I like to use it when I'm on the go. Like if I'm like going to some event or doing something, I will be like texting it like small tasks I need to do to try to like check it off my to-do list. So one example was that I was planning this like surprise party for one of my friends, and at the same time I was like working and like, kind of going between a couple meetings, and I was texting my Open Cloud in the middle, be like, hey, I'm doing this party, like I want to like print these flyers, and I have to send them to my like friend who has a printer at our office, like can you make these like flyers in this theme for me? And then it would kind of like do something and send me a photo, and I'd be like, no, that doesn't look good, like, put this emoji, whatever. And so then it would like finally like made my flyers, and I sent it to my friend, and I was basically able to kind of like steer it just through like text. So I think it's good at things like that, where it can just kind of like do a simple thing like, okay, make this PDF for me and send it out. I think what it's bad at is, one thing I really wanted to do was create like voice assistant for myself in the morning. So the vision was like, I listen to podcasts a lot. So like when I'm getting ready in the morning, I listen to podcasts, but I always also would want Like, I was like, what if I could create a podcast that was like super personalized to like what I want to hear, and it was also interactive. Like, I'd wake up and it'd be like, oh, good morning, Priyanka. Like, so and so texted you last night, and there's so and so emails. Like, what do you want to do? And then while I was like picking my outfit, brushing my teeth, I could be like, oh yeah, can you respond to Melissa and like tell her this? And like, could you like send this email here? And it basically would do it all through voice. I think like the voice model is like good, like it can transcribe well, but I think then like getting it to actually like go through all the motions of like, okay, transcribe it and then call this other skill that then gets your email and then does this, like having too many steps was something that I haven't like exactly figured out yet, like how to get it to like go all the way through that loop, and do that whole thing.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like there's an opportunity for a startup to kind of like build that.
I know, I was
build that
like,
out.
next startup idea. I also feel like when I was actually building the company, I was so busy like trying to run the company and figure out what to do that I had like not as much time to explore all these new tools as I wanted to, right? Like I feel like actually the issues I was having with like OpenClaw, I could totally like have solved if I just like had like a whole day to just sit there and like keep looking at it. Yeah. But it was just like I was just kind of like on the surface playing around with it, and yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of like you. We just don't have enough time to like tinker with these technologies, and especially when we're adopting it within our company, I think we've got to be a little careful because like something will come out. You base your whole company on OpenClaw, let's say, and then 2 months later, it's completely scrapped out.
Now
there's,
it's
like, a
her
new
ways, right? OpenClaw's old.
Yeah,
now, right?
there's like a new thing now, and
Yeah.
one thing to say is like as a company in the modern age, you have to be really good at just like you turning every 2-3 months and adopting and trying new things. But we use a lot of AI for our customers. A lot of AI when we're coding, but outside of that, we kind of like stay away.
Yeah.
If I have a lot of friends that build a lot of cool things. I try to use their products.
Yeah.
But outside of that, not really.
Yeah. So do you use any AIs outside of the coding tools?
Yeah. So recently, at our company, we're trying to understand what consumer AI looks like.
Yeah.
So every single time there's a new release of an existing app, but with an AI interface, we like exclusively use that. For example, like the Yelp AI is absolutely fantastic, right? You go to a restaurant, you don't know what you want to eat. You can look at the menu, or, previously you'd go to Yelp and see what food items kind of like catch your eye. You could just search, I'm feeling XYZ, like, what should I order here? And it would pull the reviews or pull all the images and like give you a comprehensive like result of what you should eat, which I really like. I was telling you earlier about the Google Maps AI, which I think is pretty mind blowing as well. Kind of curious to see what companies like Airbnb, Uber, DoorDash, like these traditional like ginormous consumer businesses are going to do with AI. We haven't seen anything from them yet, but when they do come out with it, I'll definitely be one of the early users.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting to see how like user behaviors and patterns evolve with that. Like for example, when you're talking about the Yelp AI, that reminds me now. I feel like the other AI I use a lot is like search AI, which you don't even use. It's like if you ask a question now, I like basically just look at what the AI response is. Like I don't like even like click into anything, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like there's subconsciously I have like questions where like I'll either directly go to ChatGPT or I'll go to Google, and it's not even like it's like deleted, but I just like kind of know. Like I'll be like, oh, I had this question, like this is like a Google, but like look at the AI results question, or oh, this is like a ChatGPT question, or this is a Google, but like actually click into the articles question.
Yeah, we're very good at humans are very good at like figuring out what's good at what, and then just like exclusively doing that. Even when I'm coding, like when I'm doing certain tasks that require front end, I use a certain model.
Yeah.
If I'm doing like a comprehensive thing, I would use a completely different model.
Yeah.
And if I'm writing tests, I use like Composer 2.0.
It's interesting because a year ago, like everything was one platform, right? And it's like a very like subtle but like real like change in like how you decide like what tool or like what avenue does this like particular thing go to.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Okay, briefly tell us what's next for you. What happens for the next year in your life?
The next year.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this before. I definitely see myself as founding again. I feel like for most founders, it's like kind of like this like itch, and when you're founding, like you're like doing it, and you're like kind of running your thing and like asking these questions, and it's like this thing where you keep going and going, and then when there's a break, I think maybe there was like a week where I was like, okay, this is cool, like I'm on this break, but then you start getting these like ideas again, you kind of start getting this itch again of like, but what if like I was like trying this, or like what if I could do this, and like naturally there are some restrictions, and you're working in like a larger company and with like this larger team, so I definitely know I want to found again, but I think I'm kind of waiting for the right moment and kind of meeting like the right team next. And I want to spend this couple of months, at least I would say, just like exploring for the sake of exploring. I think that's the other thing is when you're working on a company, and even if you are your own boss, you're still like really, really going down a specific niche or a specific path because you're trying to get this company to work. You're trying to like everything you do is like in this pursuit of like getting more customers, getting more revenue, or like getting this product to work. And there's not a lot of like exploration for the sake of let me just like explore this thing or like this thing. And I think that's what I want to spend this time doing while I'm not focused on like building one thing.
100%, take the weekends off, do your side projects.
Yeah.
You're in big tech now. You don't need to
I know, this is the side project maxing time now.
Yes.
All of my to-dos projects,
Yeah, knock them all out.
Yeah.
Like fix your Claude, OpenClaw thing
Yeah.
as well. Awesome. I think this is a wonderful place to stop. Thank you so much for coming on No Fixed Drop.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Awesome.